some questions, but I feel like I know so much because I've watched it so many times. Okay.
I think it said stop.
Hi, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. I'm here with John Davis, and he's going to be telling us all about a near-death experience that he had. So I'm going to go ahead and let John just take over, and he will start telling us about his near-death experience. Hi, John.
Hi, Tammy. How are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm excited that you're here.
Me too. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm really going to have a good time, I think, today. I enjoy talking about my experience a lot.
Awesome.
Well, to start off, before I had my experience, I really didn't have any particular spiritual beliefs, or I wasn't focused on that. I was 21 at the time and had just come off a long period of going to Catholic church. My dad and my mom were very Catholic, and growing up, we went to church 2 times during the week, and then of course on Sunday. So we went 3 times during the week, and I never understood it. I never understood religion. I never got it, and I think the reason was a lot of the time the priest would be talking in Latin, so I just never got that. And we got to stop going when we were about 13 or 14. My parents said, you don't have to go anymore. And so my sister and I both said, okay, we're done. We're not going to go anymore. So that was my experience growing up. I had always believed that there was a God, but that was the extent of my religious beliefs. I had no idea. So when I had my near-death experience, that was really the first time that I had any kind of paranormal event or dream or anything happened that led me to believe that there was so much more than what we have here on earth in our earth life experience. And in fact, it wasn't until a day after I had my NDE that I really understood what had happened. Because when I came back after I had the experience and I died on the operating table, when I came back, there was all these people looking down at me on the table, on the operating table. And the surgeon had said, okay, we got him back. Well, I had asked them that day what had happened. And they said that I had died and that I was dead for 7 minutes. Well, and what happened and transpired and what I saw after that took me a little while, about a day or so, to really understand that what I saw was where we go when we leave this earth, and that earth isn't our real home. The other side is our real home. And the only person that I had ever talked to about that at the time was my mom. My mom was very metaphysical, and she had heard about near-death experiences. And she'd asked me some different questions about what I told her. And she said, I really think that you had a near-death experience. So that's a little bit of the background. How the whole thing started was I was in California. I was in San Jose with my mom and my dad and my sister. And we had just gotten some scooters. My dad had won a promotion at work, and they sent him 2 scooters or 2 mopeds, and we used to drive them every weekend. Well, one weekend I was going too fast, and I turned this corner, and I lost control, and I crashed into a tree, and I crashed hard enough that I landed on my hand, and I had to have several tendons reattached to the bone. I had pulled them right off when I landed. So I went in for the surgery, and before this, I had never had surgery before. So this was my first surgery at age 21. So I'm laying there, and they give me the anesthesia, and I can feel it going up my arm, into my shoulder, and then I felt it going into my chest area. It was cool, like it was cold. And as soon as it hit my heart stopped. And what they told me later was that I had had an allergic reaction to the anesthesia and it killed me. And I was
Wow.
actually dead for clinically dead for 7 minutes. Well, to me, it seemed like from the second that I closed my eyes from dying, I opened my eyes again, and I was in this unbelievably beautiful place. And my first thought was, I had no idea how big this hospital was. It was this enormous, enormous, and I thought, where was this hidden this whole time? Right before I could start thinking too much about what I was seeing, in my left ear, I heard, "My name is Alan. I'm your spirit guide." And at the time, I didn't question anything. I didn't know what that meant. I had never heard the term spirit guide, but I just went along with everything and I just listened to what I was being told. And my spirit guide, Alan, told me everything that I was seeing and explained to me in a lot of detail what was going on. Well, this building that I was in, it was a corridor. And it was so long. It was just so incredibly long that I couldn't even see the end of it. It was like it was miles long. And next, there were tables, marble tables, about 6 feet apart, going down as far as you could see. And there were two people sitting at each one of these tables. They were made of beautiful, white, pristine marble. This whole building was made of beautiful white marble, and the outside had these tall, gorgeous columns. And each one of these columns was right next to the table that these two people sat at. And what I found out was that the two people at each one of these tables, they're called orientation counselors. To the left of the table were these doorways or these tunnels that looked like they had been chopped right out of the marble. Absolutely just beautiful. And my guide said, "Go look in one of the tunnels." So I walked over and I put my hand on the wall and it was solid. You know how some people think that when you die that nothing is solid?
Yeah,
It
that's
was,
what I was thinking and wondering
yeah.
about because I was like thinking that they sound very solid, like an actual building.
Oh yeah, yeah. When I touched it, it was like touching marble. It was cool to the touch,
That's
and it was
cool.
absolutely solid. So I looked in this tunnel, and they were probably the tunnels were about 5 feet wide, and maybe maybe 7 or 8 feet tall. They were beautiful. There was no doorway on them. They were just tunnels that you could walk in or walk out of.
So you're
So
saying there were several tunnels? Like there was
there were millions.
millions of tunnels.
Yeah, because as far down as you could see were these tunnels and these tables, and you couldn't see the end of
Wow.
it. It was like looking miles and miles. That's how long this building was. It was like it had no end to it. It was just enormous.
Wow.
So my guide said, "Look to your left inside that tunnel." So I looked inside the one that was next to me, and it was like looking into space. I could see stars, I could see planets, and I could see galaxies. It was
And that was just from one of the tunnels that you looked in.
Yeah,
That was
just
just one of
one.
them. Yeah. Okay.
It was
That's crazy.
absolutely, it was magical. It was absolutely beautiful. Then my guide said, and by the way, I never even looked over to see what my guide looked like. I didn't even think about that. I
It
was
didn't
so,
matter.
yeah, I was so engrossed in what I was being shown and what was happening that I didn't even ask him any questions. So anyway, he said look to the next tunnel. So I looked over to the next tunnel, and there was a man that was coming through the tunnel. He was an elderly gentleman, probably 80 or 90, and he was holding his hand over his heart. And my guide said he was doing that because he had a heart attack on the earth plane in Earth, and he died from a heart attack. So he had his hand on his chest, and he put his other hand up on the door like he was pulling himself through the doorway of one of these tunnels. Well, immediately, one of the counselors who was sitting at this table, she stood up, she walked over, she took her hands in his, and she walked him back over to the table and sat him down. I saw her mouth moving, but I didn't know what she was saying. My guide told me that she is an orientation counselor, one of millions of these types of counselors. And her job is to help people remember that they have just finished a lifetime and that they're coming back, and they come through the tunnel, through that doorway, and they're back on the other side. So as she was talking to him, my guide said, "Watch him carefully." So I looked over and I was watching him, and all of a sudden, he started changing from that of a man in his 80s or 90s to a man who was in his 30s. He just changed. And my guide said that's because on the other side, all of us are always in our 30s. And
I dig it.
I was just absolutely blown away, totally amazed, just soaking in everything that I possibly could, just soaking it in. Well, after she was done talking to him, telling him he's on the other side, he finished a lifetime, and then you get your memory back. Somehow, before we come into a lifetime, we have amnesia about the other side. Because if we remembered what we knew, we would never actually test ourselves. So by coming into life without our memories intact, we learn and experience and develop and grow spiritually. And that's why we're here. But when you cross over, you get all those memories back again. So when she was talking to him and he was getting his memories back, he began to realize, okay, I'm not really an older elderly gentleman. That's not my true form. My true form is to be in my 30s. And within 30 seconds, it was like watching this man change back to his real self and back to his real body, who he really was. And this part really blew me away also. After he was done talking to her, he stood up and he walked over to his right. And next to the right of these tables, first you had the doorways, then you had these tables where they sit you down, and then to the right you have these huge columns, beautiful white marble columns, and they're next to each and every table and door. Well, he got up, he walked down 2 stairs into what I call the gardens. Nobody told me what they were, but they were just the most breathtakingly beautiful gardens you could possibly imagine. And they went as far as you could see.
So basically, you walk down a couple steps, and then all of a sudden,
yep,
it was just a garden.
In these gardens.
Wow.
And they were as long as the building was long. Outside there was beautiful grass, and the grass, it was more green than any kind of grass I've ever seen. It was absolutely just beautiful. Everything was perfect. The plants, the trees, the flowers. There were plants and flowers there that we don't have on Earth. It was absolutely just beyond beautiful. It was like looking at a garden.
So basically, it's kind of like how it is, I guess, if we had a garden here, but it would be like times 10,000 intensified.
Yes, exactly.
With everything, the feeling, the colors, the scents, probably like literally everything, like times.
Everything. It's like sensory overload.
Right.
It was something you just had never seen.
And were you able to smell it just as strong as like how you were seeing it?
I wasn't able to smell it. I don't think I was that close.
Okay.
I was still inside the building.
Pretty far.
Close to that
okay. Okay.
My guide told me to look off to the right, so I watched and I followed him. He walked into these gardens, and this is what everybody does. Everyone has one of these when they get back. They have a reunion. Everybody there were so many people here to the right of this column. This is where you have a reunion. You meet with everyone who has crossed over before you, or friends, family members, people that you knew who had already crossed over, and they reunite with you when you finish your lifetime. And you have these reunions inside or outside in these gardens. And it was the most euphoric, joyful experience because when you come back from an Earth life, it's a big deal. This planet, out of all the other planets we can go to, I was told this one is the hardest. You have,
Shocking.
yeah, you have the hardest trials here. You have loss of people. You go through tremendous sorrows, and that just means that this world is the hardest one to go to. But you learn a lot. You
Is it
learn
because there's so
so
much,
much.
there's like all the negativity exists on this, on
Yes,
this planet.
exactly.
So on
Because
all the other ones, I mean, is there still negativity, or is it just not as much as
as far as I was told, the other planets have evolved to a point where they don't have the same things we do. Like
problems and
those,
stuff?
yeah,
Yeah.
they don't have wars, they don't have suffering, they don't have hunger, they don't have homelessness. They all of those things they've evolved beyond that.
So pretty
This
much
is the
any other
only
place is better than where we're at, pretty much.
yes,
Okay.
that's a really good way to put it.
Okay.
Exactly. This is the hardest one.
Okay. Good to know.
And
So we can get through this. We're good.
yeah, absolutely. Yep,
Right.
absolutely. So we all come to this world to learn as much as we can. And when you get back from the other side or from Earth, all of your memories come back. And that's why you have such a wonderful,
Oh,
fantastic reunion,
yeah.
because everybody is so proud of you for actually coming to this life in the first place. Because life is hard. Life on the earth is not meant to be perfect for any of us, because if it were, we wouldn't come in to begin with.
Mhm.
We're here to go through challenges and endure things that we don't have on the other side. That's the reason for the test. So
So is it kind of like on the other side, everything, as I thought about this, everything is so great, you know what I mean? That
yes,
do you really understand what that means if you don't know the opposite of it?
yes, that's true. That's true.
There's really not quite the appreciation for it if you don't know how bad things actually could be.
That's a really good point. That's true. How would you know negativity?
Right.
How would you know the difference? How
Or
would
how
you
would you know just
know?
how amazing where you are is truly? Because to you, it's
Yes.
just this is normal.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And when I was there, you wouldn't believe what kinds of things people do there. And something that I saw very clearly was that everybody has bodies. So many people would write me and say, I've heard from other NDE experiencers that we don't have bodies,
Right.
but we do. I saw them.
Mm-hmm.
They're not like our bodies are here, where we have to have organs and we have to eat to survive and drink. Over there, our bodies are perfect. They're absolutely beautiful.
So
Our
do you think that people have different over there on the other side? Do you think that some people have like our human kind of looking body, and then some people have different, just depending on, I guess, who you are or what type of being you are on the other side? Does that make
You know,
sense?
I don't know. The only people that I saw were people here from Earth,
Okay.
and all different races, all different ethnicities, but I didn't see any white lights or orbs like some
Okay.
people say. Everybody had,
A body of some
yeah, a
looking like
body
a, yeah.
that you could recognize.
See.
Yeah, that's Tammy. I recognize
Right.
Tammy, or that's John, and
Right.
you see their bodies.
Okay.
It's just like here.
Yeah.
It's just that our bodies on earth were created from the images of our bodies on the other side, because our other side bodies are perfect.
Okay.
They don't get ill, they don't get
Yeah.
disease, they don't age. They also don't have to eat or drink.
But do they? Do they
They
still eat and
can't
drink on the other side if they want to?
if they want to.
Okay. I
Yep.
thought about that and I was like, man, I kind of like food. It's
I
like, I
did
hope you still get to eat it.
I you know what, that's one of the things I thought when I got back also, because I've known chefs before, people
Right.
who love to prepare food.
Yeah.
What do they do when they get back?
Right.
So there is that there too. They can do
Okay,
that and
cool.
they can eat. They
Good
just
to
don't.
know. Good to know.
Yeah. Yeah, they just don't have to. So what's remarkable about the other side is that you can do anything you want to do. Anything you do here, you can do over there, but it's better. You can go hiking, you can swim, you can go to the beach, you can go to lectures, you can take classes,
Cool.
you can read, you can study in the libraries. A lot of what the other side is about is learning. There are so many different halls, like halls of wisdom, halls of learning, and they are made of these beautiful white marble buildings. Well, let me get back to where I'm getting off track, but I wanted to tell you and tell your listeners that the other side, it's not like sitting on a cloud playing a harp. It's not like that at all. You actually do everything. You ride bikes if you want to. You listen to music festivals, you hang out with friends and family, you do all of those things you normally do here. And you also work, but you don't work because you have to. You work at something like those orientation counselors, for example. They loved talking to people and telling them about the orientation. They just came back from an earth life. Here they are back on the other side. Everybody has work that they do, but it's not because you have to do it for a living. None of that, those economics don't exist there. You work something that you just love doing. If you love playing music, then that's what you get to do. If you love exercising or you love writing or you just love studying, that's what you do. Your whole existence is full of learning, and over there, it's absolute joy and peace. It is so hard to try to describe what it's like. In fact, when I came back and I knew where I was, I went through a depression that
I bet.
was so severe because I didn't want to be here anymore.
Yeah.
I saw what happens when we die, and I wanted to go back there, not just because of what it looks like, but because you can feel God.
Yeah.
We can't feel God here, and I don't know why that is. But on the other side, you can feel God's love for you, how much He loves us, and how much He cherishes us. And it's the most wonderful feeling. You never want to leave. You just have this overwhelming sense of joy and peace
Hmm.
of what our real world is like, what our real home is like, not
Hmm.
like here on earth.
Yeah.
So every day, I think, okay, every day that I survive, I'm getting closer to the day I get to go home. That's
It's
how I
almost
keep
like
it.
you're looking forward to dying. You're like, can
Yeah.
I just get a disease and just be like done with this?
Yeah, exactly. And I know that I have obligations and things I have to finish here, and I'm going to do that. I'm going to finish out what I charted, what I wanted to accomplish, but that doesn't mean I don't want to go back.
You're like,
It's
hey, I'm gonna finish what I have to do, but I really hope I don't have to do this much longer. Isn't it kind of
exactly.
sad? What does your family think about that? Like,
My dad, I don't know if my dad actually believes me. And my sister,
it figures.
yeah, the only person in my family that really believes what happened is my mom. My other sisters and my dad really aren't open to that.
So
I'm hoping that
crazy.
they would be someday,
Yeah.
but they aren't right now.
Yeah. I totally get that.
So after they had the orientation, and this whole thing, I was taken on a tour is the only way that I can describe it. That I was on some kind of tour that they took me on. My guide took me on. And then the next thing that we went to, he took me to this building, and it looked just like a theater. When you walk in, like a movie theater that we see, we go in to watch movies here today.
Mhm.
I walked in, and it was rectangle, and there were no seats, but you just stood and you looked up at the screen, and it was a screen that was like a normal movie screen. And what it was is every time we finish our lifetime and we go through the reunion, we go through a life review. And this is the part that I saw for myself, I saw this, but I don't understand how it's possible. But when a person has a life review after you finish your lifetime, everything that you have ever done, anything you've ever said, did, accomplish, succeed, everything is all recorded in a life review. So when you get back, you have a life review and watch your life from when you were a baby, when you were an adolescent, when you were a teenager, everything that you went through. Did you go to college? Did you do this? Did you do that? Did you get married? And their life review shows you everything chronologically you did in your lifetime. And there's a reason for it. The first reason is you want to know, did you accomplish the goals you set for yourself before you came into life? Did you achieve what it was you wanted to achieve? That's number one. And number two is to feel the different things that you felt in your life when you had great accomplishments. What did that feel like? You also feel what you felt if you hurt others. So if you were a mean person or a cruel person, you would actually feel just like what it felt for them when you did something to them. And you learn from that and you grow from that.
I
And
have a
then you get,
question.
yeah,
When you're going, because I've heard these life reviews, and when, like, as an example, when you're experiencing one, you're at a time when someone maybe when you would hurt someone, and so you're experiencing what that was like. So basically, you're in their shoes.
mm-hmm,
Now, let's say whatever you did to this person, let's say it was like for a period of like a couple of weeks in real life, like on Earth, kind of a thing. What are you experiencing then when you're in your life review? Is it still feeling like a long stretch of time that you're feeling whatever it is that you did to this person, the pain that you caused him, or is it like condensed? Does that make any
it's
sense?
yeah, it's more condensed.
Okay.
You there's a weird concept there on the other side because there's no time.
Right.
Time is linear for us, where I've got to be somewhere at this time. I have an
Right.
appointment at this time. That doesn't happen there because there's not an end of a day. It's
I've
always,
so
yeah,
I've heard people say over there that it's like, yeah, there's no time. But
yeah,
then I've heard people say that they felt like they were there for this amount of time or whatever, like they're trying to somehow relate it
yeah,
to us or whatever. So
yeah.
that's why I was thinking about the review. Or I didn't know if, like, is each time you experience um, something that happened previously in your life review, every time you experience it, is it just the same amount of feeling of time that you're like experiencing it? Does that make any sense?
Well, when I had my death experience, I was gone for 7 minutes, clinically dead. My heart was stopped for 7 minutes. But when I was on the other side, it felt like I was there for an hour or two. So
Okay.
when we do our life reviews, in terms of our time, we could be there for a couple of days, going over our whole life to see
Right.
if we completed our goals.
Right.
But when you're actually there, it might only be for maybe an hour, if
Okay.
even that, because time just doesn't exist.
Yeah, it's
But
like such
you,
a hard thing to try and understand. You know what I
it is.
mean? Over
It's
there.
hard. Yeah. I don't even now. I don't understand how the concept works.
Right. Okay.
There's
Anyways,
just is no idea of time.
I interrupted you, but go ahead. So you were talking about
Yeah.
your
So
review,
that
your life review,
so
and
you have your life review to see how you did. Did you accomplish what you wanted to accomplish? Did you do the things you wanted to do? And most importantly, did you learn what you came in to learn? And that can be nearly anything for people. They can come in because they want to know what it's like to lose a spouse. They come in because they want to know what it's like to have children and they want to be a parent. You come in to start a corporation that isn't able to help feed thousands of people. You start charities, and whatever it is you came in for, you wanted to see, did you accomplish what you wanted to accomplish? So that's what the life review is. After the life review, and I don't know if there's any particular order to this other
okay.
than you come through the tunnel, you go through orientation, you have your reunion, then you have your life review. After that, they just showed me all these other different things. The next thing my guide took me to after we did the life review is he took me to another building. And I forgot to mention, but every time he took me somewhere, he showed me the outside of the building first.
Mm.
Every single one of these buildings looked like a Greek or Roman structure. They had these beautiful white marble columns, and I think it was because that was one of the most beautiful types of architecture that we have on the other side, and they
Mm.
duplicate them on Earth. So if you think of like the Acropolis in Greece, these buildings looked like that. In fact, if you've ever seen the outside of the Supreme Court building in Washington, it
Hmm.
has those huge columns.
Oh,
They have libraries like that, and
wow.
they're just outstanding and they're beautiful.
So basically what we have here is inspired by probably, what's on the other side.
Yes, exactly. I think people were inspired to create those things from
Hmm.
their memories when they were on the other side.
Right.
Well, the next place he took me to was very similar to the first building, and it was a theater. It was another theater, but as you walked in, there were screens all around the entire building, like it was a circle. And this building was huge. It had columns around it, but it had a dome ceiling. When you walked in, there were these movie screens all in a circle all the way around you, and you were in the middle. And all of a sudden, it started playing these these different screens, and what they were they were past lifetimes that you had.
Oh, wow.
Well, I had never even heard the idea of past lifetimes.
So you never even heard of reincarnation or past lives or
Yeah,
anything like
I'd never heard of any of that stuff.
that?
And if I didn't actually see it for myself, I don't know if I would believe it.
Yeah.
But I saw it, and as you look in, he was just showing me this area because he wanted me to know that past lifetimes are really real. There's a lot of controversy about that out there in the
Mm-hmm.
world, but
Mm-hmm.
he wanted to show me that actually they really are. And when you look at yourself in a past lifetime, of course you don't look like you do now,
Right.
but you know that it's you. And one of the ones he showed me, and I can see this so clearly, is I was a monk, and I was probably in my 60s, and I had a red robe on, a red gown like monks would wear.
Mm-hmm.
And my job in that lifetime was to teach kids about Buddhism, about the monastery. That was my whole job during that lifetime.
Yeah.
And again, if I hadn't seen that myself, I don't know if I would have believed it.
Yeah.
But
Of course not. Yeah.
yeah, but we actually have past lifetimes. Well, here's the other part that blew my mind completely. After he showed me the three lifetimes I had, just to say that yes, other lifetimes exist. It's a true phenomena. It really happens. The next thing he took me to, the outside looked like a stadium, like a football stadium, where it could hold thousands and thousands of people. Well, as I walked in, there were seats, thousands of seats everywhere, but the place was empty. And I walked in, and what it was a planetarium. You know, you walk into a planetarium and they
Mm-hmm.
can show you galaxies on the ceiling and planets and all of that from this planetarium. Well, that's what I was looking in, or that's what I was sitting in.
Mm-hmm.
And then I heard a voice. This wasn't my guide. This was somebody else that said, "Go ahead and sit down, and we'll start." And I sat down. I didn't know what else to do. I just sat down.
Was there
And
anyone else with you
no,
in there? Just you.
it was just my guide.
Okay. I
And
didn't know
this
if they were
person,
doing orientation for several people or
no,
just
no, all of this was just me. I
okay.
could see people when I
Yeah.
was outside everywhere, and in the library I'll tell you about. But there was in this planetarium there was nobody there
Okay.
except this person who was behind me, who I felt was the person that was running the show, the person who runs the planetarium, who actually is an expert on planets.
That's like their job there on the other side,
Yeah,
probably. Yeah.
exactly. That's exactly what it felt like.
Yeah.
Like this was his job. This is what he did on the other side.
Hmm.
So the lights went off, the screen turned on, and what he showed me were our planets in our solar system: Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Mars. And he said, or the voice said, when you look at the stars, meaning not just me, but all of
Hmm.
humanity, all of us, when we look at the stars at night, this is what we see. And he showed our planets in our solar system. Then he said, when we look at the stars, meaning everybody who's on the other side, this is what we see. All of a sudden, different planets started popping up all over the ceiling, and they started going faster and faster and faster and faster. There were hundreds and then thousands and millions of planets on
Wow.
this planetarium. And he told me, he said, there is more life in the universe than you can possibly understand. And
Oh,
what that meant was that Earth is not the only place where we can have lifetimes. Earth is the hardest place we go to, but there are millions of other planets that we can go to have lifetimes. And that just blew my mind. I
yeah.
had no idea that. I thought Earth was the only planet. So there are, out of all the thousands and thousands of galaxies in the universe, probably millions of galaxies, if not billions of galaxies. There is so much life out there that we just don't know because we're isolated here on Earth.
So did they tell you if you had past lives on these other planets?
No, I didn't see that.
Okay. And
And
did you
then,
see any other of your past lives besides the monk? I mean,
yeah,
probably.
I saw three.
So what else were you? I gotta know.
Yeah, that's true. That's fine. The second one was I was a fisherman,
Oh, cool.
and I had a little rickety boat, and my job for part of the village, I was one of the ones that went fishing to try to get fish for the village. And I had a net that I would roll up, and then I would throw the net off into the water from the boat. And it was funny because in the three lifetimes that he showed me, I had a feeling of where I was geographically on the earth. So
Wow.
that monk lifetime, that was somewhere in Asia,
Oh,
and I
cool.
don't know where. The life where I was this fisherman was somewhere in the Middle East, but again, I didn't know exactly where.
Okay.
In the third life, I had a sense was in Russia, thousands of hundreds of that, or just thousands, or probably just hundreds of years ago.
And what were you in Russia?
In Russia, I was a shoe peddler.
Oh, okay.
I had a wheelbarrow, and my job in the town was to fix people's shoes. So I was taking this wheelbarrow, and I remember very distinctly the path that I was on. It was a cobblestone road, and I was pushing along these shoes that I had fixed for different people, and I
Mhm.
would stop off at their house and drop off their shoes. So the lifetimes that I had, they were nothing special.
But I mean,
I
yeah, it was like, yeah,
Yeah, it was just a
an
total,
experience.
yeah, just an ordinary experience.
Yeah.
And you find out that that is what your lifetime is for, is to experience and to
Wow.
learn. And everything that we go through like that is planned beforehand.
Hmm.
And in fact, one of the buildings that he showed me, again, was an enormous round building with a dome on it. And there were columns in a circle around the building. And he told me, this building is where we go before we plan our lifetimes, or when we plan our lifetimes, this is what
Right.
we're doing. So I walked in, and there were people everywhere. And what people wear over there, they wear tunics or they wear robes. And my guide told me they wear these because they're the most comfortable. But I but
Yeah.
I also saw people who had jeans and a t-shirt on
Mhm.
because that's what made them feel comfortable.
Right.
So you can wear whatever you want, but I
Yeah.
saw people everywhere. And in this building where you work with your spirit guide to plan your lifetime, because no lifetime is random.
Right.
Everything is planned. Who your parents are, what country you're going to be born into, what language are you going to learn, where are you going to go to school, are you going to go to college, what's your profession going to be, and it even has in there how we're going to cross over, how we're going to die to come back home.
So we choose that. We choose
Yep.
everything that we're going to do. We actually like write out ourselves and
Yep, exactly. And how I know that is because my guide took his hand. I guess I did see part of him, but I didn't see his face or anything. But he said, "Here are your life scrolls." On so there was this marble table. There was so much beautiful marble everywhere. It was hard to not see it, but it was everywhere. And in this building where we plan our lifetimes, we write our lifetimes out on scrolls, on parchment paper. And he took his hand and he did this, and he just showed me, this is your life. And there were two parchment papers. One was wrapped in a blue ribbon and one was wrapped in a red ribbon, and they were rolled up. But I don't know what the difference in the colors meant. Well, what I did is I walked over, and this is again how I determined that things were solid. I put my hands on the table and I picked up the chart that had the blue ribbon on it, and I took it off and I laid the chart out on the table, and it was probably a good 2 or 3 feet long, and I laid it out, and it was written in black lettering, like calligraphy. Remember that? Remember they had you do that
Mhm.
in school, right?
Oh yeah.
Calligraphy. You dip
Oh,
it
yeah.
in
I
the
used to
ink.
practice that all the time. Yeah.
Yeah,
I used to have those little pens. I used to dip it in my little
yeah,
ink. Yeah,
yeah.
totally. Yeah.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And that's what it looked like. Well, as I had it as I had it fold out, I tried to start to read it, and it folded back up, just like a jack in the box. It just folded right back up because I wasn't allowed to read it. Because if I was allowed to read what I had written, I may not have gone through that test, because we put ourselves through tests in life to see how we're going to do.
Mhm.
But everybody has these. Everyone has these scrolls. Well, here's something else that I had never heard about either. I didn't even know that this was real. But we have soulmates. And since I had the experience all those years ago, I've heard of soulmates. But at the time, I didn't know what they were. My
Mhm.
guide said, that's he pointed and he said, "That's your soulmate's book." And I looked over, and I could see thousands and millions of bookshelves. And he showed me my soulmate's book. And I think what he was trying to tell me is that everybody has a life book that has all of your lifetimes in it. And I'll describe that in more detail when I get to this other place he took me. But everyone has soulmates. They don't always come into life with us. So some people feel like, gosh, I'm never going to get married. I'm never going to find my soulmate.
Right.
Well, many times you're not supposed to, because your soulmate doesn't come into life with you. That's what I learned. But here's what's so interesting: every person has this book with their name on it, and everybody calls each other by their first name. Like they don't call you, they would only use Tammy. They don't use
Right.
your whole last name. They just say
Right.
Tammy.
Mhm.
Well, that name, your soulmate's name, is on this book, and it's written from top down. So
Mm.
on the
Mhm.
binding of the book, on the outside of it, the letters go down. And
Right.
what I read, it was Nina, Nina, Nina is my soulmate on the other
Wow.
side,
Hmm.
and we all have them. So for anybody who thinks that they've been alone during their lifetime, that was probably charted, because not everybody, in fact, most people don't come into life with their soulmate, because they're coming in for different reasons, to experience something different with a relationship, to experience, maybe you charted to experience what it was like to go through a divorce, or some other thing like that that you wanted to experience. So they told me that most times your guide does not come with you. You come by yourself. And
So
then
when you
part of
say
the
doesn't come with you, you just mean like you don't actually get to meet them or have a relationship during this lifetime,
Yes,
but
exactly.
you've probably had a relationship with them in a previous lifetime or
Probably,
okay.
because on the other side, when we're all back home on the other side before we come into life, we're there with our soulmates, and we
Oh.
enjoy each other, and you live your life before you come into a lifetime.
Oh, so you lived your life on the other side with your soulmate before you even came over here.
Oh yeah,
And
and
you
then
guys basically sit down and make out your little life's plan on this next experience that you're going to have,
exactly.
knowing that
That's
you're probably going to be married to other people as well.
yes,
And you guys are totally cool with it.
it's totally cool, because on
It's
the other
like no
side,
jealousy, no problems. Okay.
no, none of that, because
Yeah.
everybody knows that they are coming in because they want to grow, they want to
Okay.
develop, they want to evolve their souls.
So
So
it
that's
makes
what
sense
they
when people say, I'm probably never going to meet my soulmate here on earth. If I mean, it's a possibility. Yeah, you're right. You may not,
exactly,
because, yeah. Okay.
because you don't always come in with your soulmate. But I
Okay.
was so amazed, because at the time I didn't know what a soulmate even was, and to see her name written down, Nina, and everybody's book was like that.
Wow.
Everybody has a book of life, and one of the places that I went into that kind of showed that to me was on the other side. There is a great deal of attention put towards learning, developing, learning, growing, discovering everything. And there's such an emphasis on that, because people like to learn. And also, people were created by God with different gifts. So many times on the other side, you do the things that God gave you specific gifts in to develop yourself. Because one of the reasons we come into life is to develop our potential. We can do that on the other side, but you don't experience it.
Right.
And it's like trying to describe to somebody what it's like to ride a bike.
It's almost like coming down here, like when we go on different planets, it's almost like getting another degree for like
Yeah,
the other side. You're like, I was on Earth and I did this and I
yeah.
was here. I
And
mean, in a sense,
I survived it. I
yeah,
went through it. I
I
survived
did
it.
it. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, I want to tell you this part too. The other place he took me to, this building looked like the Greek Acropolis. Absolutely huge. It was so long you couldn't see the end of it. That's how long it was.
Wow.
And it had columns up at the top, and it had these steps, just like what our Supreme Court building looks like, with all those steps leading up to the top. That's what this building looked like, but it was much bigger. So again, he showed me the outside, and then he took me on the inside. And when I got on the inside, I could see that this was a library,
Mm.
but this was the largest library that was there. There's no library on earth that is as large as this place was. Just enormous.
Mhm.
Everything you'd ever imagine wanting to learn is in that library. And here's the
It's
thing that's so
crazy.
crazy. It would take you days, if not longer, to walk from one place in this library to where you wanted to go to find
Wow.
something you wanted to read. But it didn't do that for some reason. And I saw this happen. I don't know, I can't explain it, but I saw it. You just have to think about what you're looking for, and you will automatically go to the place in the library where that subject is. So if you wanted to,
Well, thank goodness.
yeah, if you wanted to go look up something about, I don't know, history or anthropology, and you wanted to go look at the history of the Roman period when they were in power, you would automatically be taken to that place in the library, and you'd be in the center of all the books that were written about that time in Rome's history. It was incredible.
That's
So
crazy.
my guide said this was one of the libraries that people go to. I saw so many people there that were involved in all kinds of activities. They were studying, they were talking, they were doing all kinds of things when they were in the library. Well, my guide said, I want to show you something else. And he took me to the left side of the library. And do you know, like when we have our libraries, we have, I don't know what they call them, but they are rooms off the library, like study rooms. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and you can reserve those.
Yeah.
This is what he took me to. And next to these buildings were these rooms. They weren't huge. They were probably 10 feet by 15 feet wide. And I walked up to it, and there was a woman who was sitting in one of these study rooms. And she had a beautiful purple tunic on. She had jet black hair that was straight right down to her waist. She was sitting there and she was watching at the time that what looked like a flat screen TV mounted on the wall. Well, back when I had this experience, we didn't have flat screen TVs. So I didn't know what this was. It looked like a movie screen, but it was smaller, kind of like our um, flat screens are today.
Right.
You can go to Best Buy and buy that. They look kind of like that.
Yeah.
Well, she was she was watching a video of a war, not a war, it was a battle between the Native Americans and the cavalry in the United States. It was one of the Plains Wars where they had the Plains Indians like the Lakota or the different Sioux Indians that were fighting the cavalry.
Yeah.
And I could see it. I could see exactly what she was watching. And I thought to myself, oh no, I take it back. My guide said she is watching history. And I thought, how in the world is it possible that she can be sitting on this couch? I'm on the other side, watching this girl, watching a piece of history that happened on the earth 200 years ago when we didn't even have video cameras.
Right.
How was
You're like,
yeah.
we didn't have video cameras then.
Yeah, we had nothing. And how was it? I could not fathom how it was that this was recorded.
Right.
And my guide said, God records everything.
Yeah.
Everything is so, if you wanted to go, let's say Tammy has always had an interest in what it was like to be a Renaissance painter, an artist.
Right.
You can go to one of these rooms and you can plug in. I don't know how they do it. I don't know if they have little microchips or what they have, but you go to this video room and it's like put in a video and you can watch everything about that time in history. Here's something even more crazy that'll blow your mind. Do you remember the show? It was in the 80s. It was a Star Trek show. It was called Star Trek Next Generation. Did you ever watch that by any chance?
I didn't watch a ton of Star Trek. I wasn't as into as much as I was like Star Wars or whatever, but I did watch that. My mom and my brother watched it all the time. So I did see some of it, yeah.
Okay, well, you may have seen this part of it. During that show, it was the first time that they had ever shown what was called the holodeck. What that meant was in this show, you could go in, program what area of history you wanted to go into, and you could step into it.
Right.
And see what it was like.
Yeah.
That's real on the other side. If
So I
you,
have a question. If
yeah,
you were to step in, if you were just to step in there, it's not the same thing though as coming back here for another lifetime. When
no,
you can
it's
just
not
step
that.
in for like a few minutes and be like,
Exactly.
okay, that
Yeah,
was cool, but you don't have to be in there for an entire lifetime.
exactly. That's
Okay.
exactly correct. It's like I have always wanted to know what it was like for those men who stormed the Normandy beach in France in
Right.
World War II in
Yeah.
1944. I've always wanted to experience what those men must have gone through.
Right.
So you can do that. You can walk into that place in history. You can watch it like that girl was watching it, or you can step in and actually see it and smell it
Right.
and have that visceral sense of what it was like.
Yeah.
And that's another way of learning because
Cool.
we all love to learn over there.
Yeah.
And that's one of the ways that we learn.
Yeah. Well, it's funny
Another
because, like, as
way,
a teacher, me being a previous teacher, one things that we always say in school is that, we're supposed to be lifelong learners. And it's just funny
yeah,
because I'm like, and we just continue to learn on the other side too. So it's just,
that's
yeah,
exactly correct.
cool.
That's exactly it. And I wanted to mention to you, this sometimes makes it clearer for people as to why do we come into a lifetime? What's the reason if we can learn things on the other side?
Right.
Well, the reason is it's like trying to explain what it's like to ride a bicycle. I could tell you with 1,000 words what it's like to actually ride the first time on a bicycle, but you'll never know what that's like unless you do it.
Hmm.
So that's why we come in here
Right.
to really experience and learn it.
Yeah.
Because what's important to us on the other side, it's not about who you became or how much money you made or what kind of car you drove or what kind of house you had. None of that matters because they don't ask you that when you cross over. They ask you, did you accomplish your goals and did you try to help alleviate suffering in the world?
Right.
Those are the things they ask. They don't care. Nothing else about the earth plane matters to them.
Right.
It only matters to us because we have ego and we're concerned
Right.
about those things.
Right.
Well, here's something else that I wanted to tell you about how else we learn. Do you remember that in England and Ireland and France during the time where they had castles?
Hmm.
I don't remember what that's called, if it's called the medieval times. I think it was the medieval times where they built castles.
Hmm.
Over there on the other side, everything that is there here on Earth is also replicated on the other side. All the beautiful mountains, the
Hmm.
oceans, the lakes, everything is replicated there. And so are the buildings. Another way that we learn is we go to these places. For example, let's say you wanted to learn about a castle and you wanted to learn about what it was like to live during that time period on the earth. There's a place you can go to, and it's the other side, it's like its own planet. It's so huge. And a lot of people call it heaven, some people call it the other side, but it's like another planet.
Right.
Well, one of the ways you learn is if you wanted to learn about what it was like to be medieval Earth, you could go to this place on the other side where they have castles, where they built them, and the castles look exactly like they did on Earth. So my guide said, walk into the castle. So and this castle was just enormous. It was huge. I've never seen a real castle before, but
So
this
cool.
castle was enormous. It was either in France or England somewhere when it was in its heyday, when it was really being used back then in history. So I walked in, and immediately I saw to my left and to my right were these huge walls. And the walls were covered with life-size paintings of the people, of the men and the women who lived in this castle.
Hmm.
The royalty, the kings or the
Oh,
queens
wow. That's
or
cool.
their kids and everyone that had ever ruled from that castle, their picture, there was a painting of them on the wall, life size, of what they looked like, and also how they dressed. Not only that, but in front of each picture, there was a podium. So there were probably 30 podiums in this castle,
Mhm.
maybe more. And on the podium, can you see me? Did I lose you
Oh
there?
no, I can see you.
Okay. On this podium, there was a book, and it was laid open like this,
Mhm.
and you could walk up to it. And what this book was a was a history about that king or queen's life. It had everything that they did in that lifetime,
Mhm.
where they were born, how they grew up. It had conversations in it. It had all the decisions that they had made as a queen or
Mhm.
a queen. Did
Right.
they help their people? Did they serve them, or were they tyrannical? Did they cause
Mhm.
people to suffer and
Mhm.
to die? Were they good leaders? It was so everything was in this book. When I looked off to the right, my guide said, "Look to the right." And as I looked to the right, there was a woman who was coming down the spiral staircase.
Mhm.
Off to the right, there was of this castle, there was a spiral staircase.
Mhm.
And she was walking down, and she walked up to me. And she was wearing a red tunic with a golden sash, and she had golden sandals on. And I thought, oh my gosh, this girl can actually see me. She had golden strawberry blonde hair, and she walked up to me. She could see me, and she said, "Is there anything I can help you find?" And I think I was so stunned,
Mhm.
I didn't know what to say. So I said the most stupid thing I could ever think of saying to somebody. And I said, "Oh no, I'm just looking."
Oh my, like you're here on Earth. I'm good. I'm just looking around. I'm just window
Yeah.
shopping.
How today I still kick myself. Why did I say that? I could have asked her anything.
Yeah.
Well, my guide said the reason that she was asking me that was in her life on the other side, she's a scholar about the medieval time of Earth's history.
Wow.
She knows all about that time, all the castles, the life of Henry VIII. She knows about all these different people. So she didn't know that I was having a near death experience. She saw
Oh.
me. She saw me just like she would see anybody else.
Yeah.
And I was just blown away. I couldn't think what to ask her, and I just said, "No, I'm just looking." But
That's
that was
funny.
amazing that if you want to learn something, anything you want to learn or experience, they have it there. It's like a
It's crazy.
huge, it's like an amusement park for adults. They just
Yeah.
have everything you could ever possibly want to experience is there.
Yeah.
And the last thing that happened, oh, I wanted to tell you and your listeners this too. Animals are also there. So all the
Good.
animals that you had, yeah, and all of us have either, cats, dogs, horses, whatever we have, they're all there too.
And so it doesn't matter what kind of animal you had, it'll be there. Because some
Yep.
people like people talk about dogs and cats, but sometimes you don't hear about the other animals. Like, my mom loves her horses and stuff. And so,
Yeah.
like, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. They all have souls, and they
Right.
all survive death also. So all the animals that you've ever had, they'll be there on the other side
So
waiting for
cool.
you.
Yeah. Love
And
that.
here's the last thing that happened. After they showed me all these different things, my guide took me to a meadow, and it was probably one of the most beautiful meadows I've ever seen. It had wildflowers and grasses that were right up to your knees. As far as you could see, it was just this beautiful, absolutely incredible, gorgeous meadow. And I was standing there by myself. The very next second, there was a man standing in front of me. It was like he just appeared there. He was different than the others. He could see me also, but he was different in the sense that I could not see his face. There was so much light so much energy coming from his face that I couldn't make out his features, but I could see his hands. I could see his feet. He was wearing golden sandals, like the color gold sandals that wrapped up his calves.
Mhm.
And he had a gold sash across his waist as a belt. And he was wearing a white gown. And it was at that point that I realized the reason this person is different is because he's Jesus.
Mhm.
This was Jesus. Jesus was actually real.
Mhm.
And he said to me, he said, "You must tell them there is no death." And then the very second he said that, boom, I was right back in my body on the operating table.
Wow.
And you know how sometimes you hear people say that when they have a near death experience that they come back with certain abilities and
Yeah.
gifts. I had nothing. I
That's no
didn't come
fair.
back
That's
with
not fair.
no, yeah, yeah, totally not fair. But the only thing that happened is that I have absolute 100% recall of what I saw.
Yeah.
So maybe that was considered to be my gift. But I saw I remember everything that I saw, the conversations, the people I talked to, what they showed me, everything. And he said, "You must tell them there is no death." So ever since then, I've been living my life trying to share my experience. And the reason, I guess a friend of mine had told me, "You need to tell this story on Facebook." I said, "Okay." So I put it on Facebook. And that's when I started realizing that people were really touched and moved by hearing my story. So now that we have social media, I can share it with more people now. Whereas
Yeah.
before, I just used to tell one person here or there
Right.
that, "Hey, I heard your mom is dying or that your dad
Mhm.
passed away. I want to tell you something that happened to me when I was 21 years old that might give you some comfort."
Mhm.
Well, now I can do that at a much larger scale.
Oh yeah.
So that's what I've been doing.
That's
And
awesome.
coming on your show
Mhm.
is another way that I can do and fulfill that promise that I made to Jesus. Excuse me, that I would keep sharing with people that there is no death. And ever since then, that's what I've been doing.
That is so cool. I mean,
Yeah.
I was raised in church my whole life. My dad was an Assemblies of God minister.
Oh, I
The
remember you
church I
said
went
that.
to was like Pentecostal, so we were like, we
Yeah.
were crazy. um,
Yeah.
but yeah, like we didn't believe in reincarnation and like just all
Yeah.
this other stuff, And when I started watching these NDEs on Jeff Mara's podcast, I mean, that's where I
Yep.
just started. I mean, I was watching like 2 or 3 a day, like obsessively
I,
watching
I,
these things.
I was too. I
Oh
still do
my
that.
gosh, yes.
It
And
reminds me.
it was just exciting to hear, I guess, the other side and explained in this way. Because even as a little girl growing up in church my whole life, going to church Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, sometimes Friday nights,
Oh my gosh.
it's like I've never truly heard God's love um, the way I've heard it through these NDE experiences and stuff.
Me too.
Just, and it's sad because I'm like going, this is the way that I think God intended for his good news to be, preached and spread,
Yeah,
so differently than the way that, we heard it growing up. So,
absolutely. Absolutely. So much of what we think in the Bible was actually made up by the early church.
right.
A lot of that stuff was just made up.
Well,
It's
because church and state was combined. And so it was like the government's was their way of having some control and
yeah,
rules and
exactly.
laws for us or whatever they thought was necessary.
Yep,
Yeah.
exactly. That's
Yeah.
exactly it.
So I have a question about soulmates again.
Yeah.
So when you go to the other side, or whatever, are you with your soulmate? Like, do you travel around? Like, are you guys together on the other side, or are you guys
Yeah.
separate, like independent? Like,
You're together.
oh, okay,
It's kind of like being man and wife, but you're not attached to each other all the
right,
time.
not like here,
You would
yeah,
just yeah, you would kind of like you would act with your soulmate just like you do here.
okay,
That's your twin soul that God created you with to be your companion for your all eternity.
oh
So
wow,
you're with them as much as you want. A lot of people will separate them when they come into a lifetime and leave their soulmate there
Hmm.
just for extra learning and for growth, but you're with your soulmate all the time.
Right.
And that's what people do when they're over there. They don't just all the time do these different activities. They can if they
Right.
want to, but there's also a lot of time to just visit with your loved one.
Right.
You can just hang out with your soulmate. You can go do something. You can go to the beach and spend the whole day with your soulmate if you want to, or go
Right.
do something, or anything you want to do with them. They're
So it's
there.
kind of gives a lot of comfort, I feel like, to people that maybe think that they are never going to meet their soulmate. Maybe they don't, and maybe they're not going to meet their soulmate here. But it's
Yep.
kind of like comforting for them to know that, okay, maybe you're not here, but this life isn't that long. You know what I mean?
You know
And
what?
you'll have them on the other side forever. So for people that think, I'm never going to fall in love and I'm never going to find that person, like, you found them already. You have them. You're just not with
Yep.
them right now.
That's exactly what happens. You hit the nail on the head. They feel like, oh my gosh, I'm never going to meet somebody.
Hmm.
Well, maybe that's something you didn't chart to have in this life,
Right.
but that doesn't mean that you don't have somebody when you cross over.
Right.
People think, and there's reason for this, but people think that their lifetime right here is is everything there is, because
Right.
they don't
This is it.
remember that the other side is real. Yeah, they think this is it.
Hmm.
This is such a small, infantile, minuscule part of life when you think about it. When it comes to eternity,
Right.
we never end.
Well, and I thought about how people, here on earth, how sometimes you get so caught up in like, oh, I got to do this and I got to do this. I do these things before I die, your bucket list, your
Yeah.
checklist and whatever. And I'm not going to do it before
Yep.
I die or whatever. And it's like, little do you know, I mean, yeah, you can experience all that on their side and it's going to be even better. So when you think that you didn't go
Exactly.
skydiving here, I mean,
Yeah.
you can go do that on the other side.
Yeah, that's
So
true.
do people actually, as a matter of fact, do people experience those things with the same adrenaline rush that you would hear? Like, if you went skydiving here, you get that like, woohoo. Like if you were on the other side, do you get those same feelings?
I don't know. They didn't show me that.
Okay.
Yeah, I have no idea.
Okay.
Yeah, they didn't show me any of that, and I wish that I had known what I was seeing when I was having the experience,
Right.
because I would have asked so many more questions. Even now, I still have questions all the time.
Yeah.
People write me a lot and they'll email me and ask me a question that I never thought of.
Do you watch other interviews of like other NDEers
Oh
to
yeah.
see if there's something that you go, oh, that
Yeah.
connects
Yeah.
to what? Okay.
Yep. I'm just like you like that. I love to watch NDE stories
Yeah.
because it reminds me so much of the experiences that I saw.
Yeah.
And it helps me feel like I'm not so alone, that I'm
Mhm.
not the only person that has seen this.
Right.
Because when you see it and you experience it, you just become absolutely homesick.
Oh yeah.
It's a horrible feeling to know
Well,
that.
you can be homesick even before, like without having a near-death experience. I mean,
Yeah.
I know I have felt like that because I've always known that, like, we have heaven and stuff like that. I didn't know of it the way I know it now. But even after learning about it, I was just like, I don't want to be here anymore. Like, why do I have to be here? Like, I'm over this.
Yeah, I want to go home now. I've had enough.
Right.
And you're right when you said that life isn't that long. Something that happens on the other side, because there's no time there, a lot of us will choose a hard life, because from the perspective of the other side, a lifetime here doesn't seem very long.
Mm-hmm.
Because over on the other side, you might live 80 years here on earth, but on the other side, that might be like a month or two, because it doesn't exist. So when we're on the other side, we choose things to test ourselves to see how we'll do.
Yeah.
And we chart and we plan for negative experiences to go through, because the truth really is, you learn the most when you go through something like a break.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, unfortunately, just like if you go through a breakup, you love somebody and that relationship ends, you miss that person. But once you heal and you're okay again, you learned a lot from that. You learned a lot from that experience, and that's what happens
here. Because like when we're going through those negative experiences and stuff, it's so, I mean, huge to us, in the moment that we're going through it. I'm wondering, on the other side, like our spirit guides or whatever, I mean, do you have family or other people that are like watching you go through your life? And are they like trying to help you? Do they
Yeah.
help you? Like,
Well, as far as I know, when I had my experience, it's not so much that your family is trying to help you, they're always around you. The veil that separates our worlds, the dimensional veil,
mhm,
somehow on their side, it's thinner than it is on ours.
okay.
So they have the
They
ability
have
to
a
look.
veil too, then,
Yeah, they have a veil too.
that keeps them from interacting with us.
Yep,
Okay.
exactly. But they have the ability to look in and see us, to see how we're doing, how are we progressing, and they try to help us too by sending love. But the primary person that works with you is your guide,
Okay.
and that's the guide you've been with since birth.
Now, what about people that are gonna? There's people that'll be like, oh, you're talking to a guide. You know, you can only talk to God. You know what I mean? Like if
Yep.
you're talking to these other, because you know how like in religion it's been so like I don't know, studying the stars is a sin. You know,
Yeah,
anything
absolutely.
mystic is like a sin. Like you can't be talking to
Yep.
a medium or a psychic. Like everything is a sin.
Yep, it is. It's
And is
true.
it like that because they're just trying to keep us like,
Yeah,
not knowing things?
when they get there, even somebody who was like that, when they cross over, they realize, oh my gosh, all that dogma wasn't true. Like in the Bible where Jesus says the only way to the Father is through me.
Right.
Well, that didn't mean literally through him.
Yeah.
It just meant his teachings.
Right.
You love God, and you help others.
Right.
But he didn't mean that to mean that he was the only thing you can follow to get to God, because all God cares about is you coming to him. That's why he gave us free will. He wants us to love him.
Well, it's
That's why
interesting to
he
me
gave
because
all of us free will.
I think it's interesting that people can take scriptures from the Bible, and one scripture they'll take and they'll say, well, this is just metaphorically speaking, right? That's just a metaphor, right? But then
Yeah.
another scripture they'll take and they'll be like, oh, but this one's literal. I'm like, how did you decide which one's literal and which one
Yeah,
was
which
metaphorical?
which
Oh,
one is
okay.
right?
Right.
Exactly.
But that's just the way it's like always been or whatever.
Exactly.
So then when people, I guess I have another question for you, because I'm thinking about like friends that I've had that have had parents or someone close to them recently pass away. And when they pass away like that, I know that they can come to you through your dreams and stuff.
Hmm.
Um, but when you get to the other side, are they even thinking about everybody else over here? Or
Oh
are you
yeah.
just like off busy doing your thing?
Nope. They still think of you. They think
Okay.
because they're still attached.
Okay.
For them, it's interesting. It's an interesting idea because for them, like when your grandma died, let's say for example, to her, she's going to be in her 30s over there when she gets back. And for her perspective, she's going to see you again in just a couple of weeks or a month. So the missing for them isn't as bad as it is for us.
Right.
Because let's say your dad died tomorrow and you were supposed to be here another 30 years. Well, when he crosses over, he's going to miss you, but it's not the same kind of missing that we have.
Mm-hmm.
You'll miss your dad more because he's just not here.
Right.
And 30 years of your life, that's a really long time.
And you don't even get to
So
get a glimpse of them, Yeah.
exactly. Exactly. I'll tell you something that happened to me. And I don't have any gifts. I don't have any spiritual gifts. I'm probably the most skeptical person you'd ever meet.
Luckily that
I
you have the gift of an NDE
Yeah,
experience, like
and
you have that.
yeah, I do have that. Well, here's something interesting. The night that my wife's dad died, we were in the hospital. He was dying, and he died that day. Well, that night, he came to me, and it was either in a dream or some kind of a vision, because normally I don't even remember my dreams. And I certainly don't dream about anybody who's crossed over. But he came to me in that dream and he said, tell my family I'm okay. I was like, oh my gosh, I just heard
Mm-hmm.
from Jack. So I woke up my wife and I said, Sherry,
Mm-hmm.
I just heard from your dad. He told me to tell you he's okay. That's probably the only thing that's ever happened to me
Yeah.
that I can say was a mystical experience.
Right.
but they're okay. They're all over there waiting for us to come over when it's our time.
So then, okay, again, I'm gonna I have so many questions. One more question. Um,
Yeah.
so like, okay, so when you have someone that passes away, like let's say my dad were to pass away or something, how do you know if they haven't already, are they on the other side or do they pop into another lifetime?
No, they're on the other side. Yeah, popping into a lifetime isn't real. It's
No, I mean, well, like if you reincarnated. So like if you have someone who passed away and they go, they're gone, you have a funeral, they're gone, right? So
mm,
in my eyes, I'm thinking that they're on the other side.
right.
But remember how, like you said, like if some people, when you die, they give you a choice to come back or not, and then and you can come back as in the previous life you already had, or come right back into it, or you can choose a new life to reincarnate into a new life.
It's a new one. Yeah, you don't. Most of your time is spent on the other side, and
Oh, okay.
yeah, that's our real home.
So we're not. So most of our time really is there.
Exactly.
Okay.
You come
Okay.
into life. You come into a lifetime for a very brief period of time, from
Okay.
their perspective,
Okay.
just to learn and to grow. So
Okay.
for them, when they cross, they don't go into another lifetime until all their loved ones come back for the reunion.
Oh, so you guys have to all basically have a reunion before you guys
Oh
could ever
yeah.
go back and have another,
Yep.
like
Absolutely.
reincarnate or whatever.
Yep. Yep. Because you
Oh,
can think of it as being, it's like 100 years. You have a
yeah.
lifetime, and then you may not have another one for 100 years.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, almost all of your time is spent home. That's our
Okay.
real home.
Well, no wonder everyone misses it so much then.
Oh my gosh, yeah. And especially when you see it or you feel what it feels like, even just a glimpse of it,
Yeah.
you're like, oh my gosh, it's all really real.
I've heard
All
a
of that
lot of
is true.
NDEers say that it's like coming back and being here after being there. I mean, a lot of them have gone through some depression and stuff.
Oh, absolutely. It is so hard when you get a taste of what it's like
Hmm.
and you compare it to here. It's just really really hard to try to realize, okay, I've got to finish out my life. This is not the perfect world, but I'm here to learn, I'm here to grow, and I'm going to try to do my best and help others while I'm on that path.
And did you happen to see anything on the other side relating to like Earth and like our future, our
No,
planet?
no,
So
nothing like
nothing.
that. Nope. I was being moved so quickly from one
Hmm.
place to the next on this really rapid tour that I didn't even have a chance to ask a question because I didn't even know that I was dead.
Right. Oh, you didn't. So you didn't actually know you were dead.
Yeah, I didn't know I was dead until I woke up on the operating table and the surgeon
So did
said
you
that I
think you were
had died.
dreaming or like what? Or
I
didn't
had
even have a
I had no idea where I was.
just, yeah, you were
No
just going with
clue.
it.
Yeah,
Like, okay, this is
I
cool.
went with it. I rolled with it, and it's because it felt so incredibly. You just feel this incredible amount of love.
Yeah.
You're just like, oh my gosh, the love is extraordinary, from other people, from God, from family members, from loved ones.
Did
It's
you
just
see
a
family
whole.
members when you crossed over? I can't remember
No,
if you
no, I
mentioned that or
didn't see
not. No.
any. Yeah, I didn't see any family members. I
Have
felt
you
like
had many people in
everything.
your life pass away though?
Yeah,
Oh, you have?
I had. Well, no, no, because I was 21. So I had both my one of my or no my grandma and my grandpa on my dad's side were there, but
Oh, okay.
I didn't see
Oh,
them.
you didn't see them.
Yeah.
Is that because they knew you weren't going to stay? Because they didn't give you a choice. It doesn't sound like you
No,
weren't given a choice.
you know what? That is something to this day that I think they did on purpose. Because if they had asked me, do you want to stay or do you want to go? I would have said, I want to stay.
Yeah.
I absolutely want to stay. I don't want to go back. I want to stay here.
Right.
But I think that's why they didn't give me a choice.
And I've heard people say, even when they have been given the choice, that I've heard other Indians say they were given a choice as to whether they want to stay
Yeah.
or not. And even the ones I've heard that answered like, yeah, I don't want to go back to Earth or whatever, at some point somehow they were talked back into coming back to Earth.
Yep. Yeah. They get talked back into
So
it
it's
like,
almost like, do you really have a choice? Because I feel like they
yeah.
already kind of know what you're going to do and they're going to make that decision for
Yeah,
you.
because that's the thing. When you come into life, you want to you want to take advantage of everything you experience, everything you learn, so you can take it with you. Because that's all you take is your character. You just take what you
Mm-hmm.
learned and who you helped and who you cared for, who you tried to make better through your life.
So what's interesting too is like all the things that like we feel so bad about, like I'm thinking about just because the way religion is here and the guilt and everything that, you know, Christians feel for every little thing they do or whatever. As an example, like when we have a divorce here, like what they don't know is that you're sitting here feeling guilty because you have a divorce, you know, or you have two
Right.
divorces or whatever. And little do you know that you probably planned that, but now you're going to beat yourself up over it because you have a failed marriage or,
Yeah.
you know, you failed at something or whatever. And on the other side, it's just like going, okay, like they're like, no, you were just trying to see if you could do this. It was an experience.
Yep,
You don't have
exactly.
to take it so serious.
Exactly. That's exactly correct.
Because I've heard other people even say that this life is almost like a game, even.
It is.
Like a video game. Like you're trying to, you get these different levels, you have some of these obstacles that come your way, like divorce, this and that. And you're just trying to get through all these experiences to get to the end.
To get to the end, to get to go home again. That's exactly, that's a really good analogy. That's exactly what it's like. Yep.
Wow.
Well, Tammy, I gotta go to another meeting.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on here today. I really appreciate it.
I am so glad we had a chance to talk. You are just adorable to talk to.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for coming on.
This show goes well.
Yeah, it will. I have a good feeling.
Good. Well, we gotta talk. We'll stay in touch.
Yes, for sure. Definitely. Okay. Have a good afternoon.
I'll talk to you later.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.